Welcome, Professor.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. I've wanted to come to Alaska really all my life, and I took a call from Kelly, and I really want to thank her and her wonderful family and all of her friends. Alaska has been a life-changing experience for my wife, who's here somewhere, and me. We have been all over on a cruise. We've eaten the most wonderful food in the world. My grandmother wouldn't be proud of some of the food I ate. We had some of the best oysters tonight that you can imagine. But it's been just a great, great experience. And I look forward to answering your questions and getting to know some of you. So thank you so much for the honor of speaking to this group of wonderful Alaskans.
We're so happy you're here, and we would be remiss if we did not say happy birthday to Carolyn, who just had her birthday. Happy birthday, Carolyn.
Happy birthday!
I would sing, but I've been told not to. So there's that. Well, shall we jump right in?
Yes, let's.
Sure.
All right. I think a lot of people here have questions about the Trump trial that just happened in New York.
Yep.
And you were there.
Yep.
So Trump gets convicted on 34 felony counts. They say it's falsifying business records. Prosecutors, for those who don't know, it's in an attempt to cover up hush money from this film star named Stormy Daniels. But Americans across the country are outraged about what looks like a miscarriage of justice, because it's based on an unprecedented legal foundation. And you heard the evidence, you observed the proceedings firsthand. What were some of the things you experienced while you were there that shocked or concerned you? And specifically, because I've heard you talk about this, I'd like you to address what you saw the judge do with one of Trump's main defense witnesses, Robert Costello, who's an attorney who had advised Michael Cohen.
Well, first let me start with that last point. The judge decided to clear the courtroom. He kicked everybody out of the courtroom. For some bizarre reason, he let me stay. And I watched him do his best imitation of Robert De Niro. He looks at the witness and he says, "You talking to me? You looking at me? If you talk to me or look at me one more time, I'm going to hold you in contempt and I'm going to strike your testimony." He didn't think anybody was there to report on what he was doing, but he engaged in outrageous misconduct. But the more general point is this. I've been teaching and practicing and writing about criminal law for 60 years. It's now almost a month since the conviction. I have no idea what he was convicted of. I have no idea. The judge created a multiple choice test for the jury. Said, look, he should have said that it was hush money. By the way, would anybody ever pay hush money if they knew they had a list on corporate forms that they were paying hush money? Would Alexander Hamilton have done it? Would he pay hush money? No, of course not. So the judge basically said, look, if you conclude that he paid the hush money and that he fraudulently stated it as a legal expense, of course it is in some respects a legal defense, expense because he was doing it to, in part, avoid a lawsuit, then you have to, in order to turn this misdemeanor, which is based on an expired statute of limitations misdemeanor, to turn it into a viable felony, you have to conclude that he did it in order to cover up or commit another crime. Now, what are those other crimes? Well, you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you don't have to tell us what it is. You don't have to prove any of them beyond a reasonable doubt. All you have to do is conclude that he committed one of them. And here's what the three were. One, that he intended to evade taxes 2 years later when he had to pay his taxes. Of course, corporations don't pay their taxes in the year they're due. Usually they pay them a couple of years later. He didn't take these as deductions, but he might have. So that was one theory. The next theory is, although he didn't have to list campaign contributions until after the election, maybe he intended to improperly list this as a campaign contribution. And third, he did it. He engaged in the fraudulent statement in order to cover up the fraudulent statement. Those were the three. And the jury didn't have to say which ones they agreed on or whether they agreed at all. You could have had 4 on this, 4 on this. You know, it's like cards wild in poker. You just don't know. And it will be very difficult for him to appeal this because if he shows there was insufficient evidence on one, they'll say, well, maybe it was the other, maybe it was the other. I've never seen a case as bad as this one in my years of practice. And this is the same prosecutor who 2 months later dismissed all the charges against Columbia students who had taken over and occupied Hamilton Hall on the theory that there was insufficient evidence to go after them. Judged by the criteria of the sufficiency of the evidence to go after Trump, there was more than sufficient evidence. So this was an example of the weaponization of the criminal justice system for partisan purposes. There was one goal. Look, I'm not a Republican, sorry. I am not a conservative. I am a liberal Democrat. I voted for Hillary Clinton, I voted for Biden, I voted for Obama. I don't know who I'm going to vote for this time. But I can tell you that the idea that you use the criminal justice system to go after somebody, and that's what they did here. They went after Trump for tonight. They went after Trump so that tonight in the debate, Joe Biden can say, you are a convicted felon, hoping to influence independent voters. And of course, Trump has one hand tied behind his back. He can't say what I can say. Well, but I was convicted by a judge whose daughter worked to raise money for the Democratic Party and who clearly would benefit from a conviction in this case. He can't say that. That's barred by the gag order. He can't say that the jurors in this case all voted for Biden and against Trump, and it was not a jury of his peers or a fair jury. So he couldn't do that. And so the victim of this is not just Donald Trump. It's all Americans. You know, the First Amendment applies not only to the Speaker, but you all have a First Amendment right to hear what Donald Trump has to say, whether you agree with it or disagree with it. And as you said in your introduction, you disagree with things I say, I disagree with things you say. I certainly disagreed with some of the things that Trump said tonight in the debate, and I disagree with some of the things Biden said in the debate. But we are the judge of that, not some judge in New York. We are the judge. We decide who we're going to vote for based on our assessment of the totality of the circumstances. So as a lawyer, I'm appalled at the way in which the criminal justice system is being weaponized and misused for partisan purposes. And ultimately, if they can come after Trump, they can come after you. As they did come after your Senator Stevens. And I've had experience here in this state with legal system. I defended Senator Mike Gravel. Remember him? He read the Pentagon Papers into the congressional record, and I was his lawyer in the Supreme Court of the United States. In that case, we won that case and established a very important precedent against prior restraint. And prior restraint means a gag order. So the Gravel case actually has implications for the Trump case. What a good question. Thank you. You gave me a real opportunity to answer fully. But get ready with your hard questions. I mean, she's such a nice person. She's going to throw me some softballs. I'm counting on you to ask all the hard questions.
Yeah,
I'm counting on you, too.
Get ready for those hard questions.
Okay.
Well, I got another softball for you.
Okay.
So we've talked about the trial. We know that Trump got convicted. Generally, I think folks know that the judges set the sentencing hearing for just a few days before the Republican convention. There's been a lot of talk about what he's going to do. Will Trump get prison time? Will he get community service? Will he get a fine? And lots of different theories behind why the judge might pick one of those solutions. What do you think will be his sentence for Trump?
Well, first of all, the judge made up his mind a long time ago. I mean, there's no secret here. The judge made up his mind. He will give him the harshest sentence he can get away with, which means the harshest sentence that won't backfire and help Trump, and the harshest sentence that won't encourage the appellate courts to reverse the conviction. So my prediction, pretty good so far, making predictions about the legal system, my prediction is he will give him a 2-year prison sentence, suspended. He will say you deserve 2 years. That's what your sentence should be. But because you're running for president and, Secret Service, I'm going to suspend the sentence. So I think it'll be a 2-year suspended sentence with probably some probationary constraints. But he will not go to prison. I guarantee you that on Election Day, he will be out of prison. Now, don't know where Hunter Biden will be, because he too is a convicted felon. By the way, I wouldn't have brought either of those cases. Hunter Biden is clearly guilty, but mostly, for the most part, people are not charged with simply making misstatements about drug use on a gun application. Now, you up here know a lot more about guns and gun applications than a kid from Brooklyn knows, but I have a lot of experience with representing people, and generally, they go after people for making misstatements on gun applications when they've committed a crime with the gun. And then they enhance the sentence by adding a year or 2 for the misstatement. But they generally don't rummage through all the applications and say, aha, this guy said he wasn't a drug addict. Let's check it out to see if he was. So I don't like selective prosecutions, whether they operate against the Democrats or the Republicans. I offered to represent Secretary Mayorkas in his impeachment because I thought, like Trump, he may have done things that deserve criticism and condemnation, but the Constitution is very clear. It says treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Trump didn't commit any of those, and neither did Mayorkas. But I think we're seeing a world where there's tit for tat. And if the Democrats go after a Republican, the Republicans can go after the Democrat.